So that happened. Mid-game, Mets-Phillies, in which the Mets are currently losing 2-1 because why wouldn't they be? The Mets decided to trade Eduardo Escobar. Billy Upler says, you know what? We're going to start to make moves, and it begins today. Eduardo Escobar, we're going to have a lot to say about him. I know I'm going to have a lot to say about him as he is traded to the LA Angels for 2 prospect pitchers, that being in Coleman and Landon Marco. So we got a lot to get into on this. Why did the Mets make this deal from everything that we know at this point? What does this mean for this Mets club going forward, and a hell of a lot more. But more than anything, everyone watching live or on replay, happy to have you guys all in here for the latest breaking news segment on WardyNYM as they've traded veteran infielder and Eduardo Escobar to the LA Angels for some pitching talent. The Mets will be eating the remainder of the contract for Eduardo Escobar at a whopping $5 million for the remainder of the year. After this season, if I'm not mistaken, there is a club option on his contract that the Angels can pick up should they wish for an additional year in 2024. But for now, Eduardo Escobar is no longer a New York Met, and he is now a LA Angel. So raw reactions. I want to know how you guys are feeling in the comments watching live or people on replay. I know that this is mid-game, so normally maybe this is something I would have held off, but this is breaking news, and honestly, this is important news regardless on what happens in this game today. I'm going to try to do my normal post-game show today as well. I'm not 100% certain. Maybe I'll just do a recap depending on the outcome because I'm already going live right now as is. It's crazy. Who would have thought that the Mets would have made a deal today out of all days? But what I want to know, everybody in the live chat right now, for people on replay in the comments below, let me know your initial reaction. This answer the poll in the live chat, which says the following: Mets acquire much needed pitching prospect depth. How are we feeling about this move? I want to see you guys. But again, more than anything, let this marinate for a couple minutes, right? I mean, you literally had Francisco Lindor talking about it with Wayno, who is on the broadcast for Apple TV tonight. Also, shout out to my beloved co-host and Anthony Recker. Reck is not only my co-host for the Queen's Corner podcast, but he is doing pre and post for Apple TV for the Mets Phillies game right now. So it's really sick to see him up there talking about the game before and then after, and knowing that, I get a chance to talk shop with him every single week on the channel. So really happy to see that. But, right after the move was announced, Brandon Nimmo hits a solo bomb. So he did his best Nick Castellanos impression. I don't know what else to say on that, but seriously, we have a lot to get into. I want to break down what is going on with this move, why the Mets probably did this move from everything that we know at this point, what could be on the horizon going forward, and ultimately, who is Coleman? Who is Landon Marco? For Angels fans that might be chiming in, especially for people on replay, let me know more on the pitchers that you know to a certain degree in the comments, because obviously I'm just looking up the guys now, so I don't have this great knowledge of scouting the guys since they were first drafted, like I know many Angels fans could probably relate with. But let's get into this. Escobar, Michael K. Voice, see ya, that's fine. But more than anything, again, let's talk about it, guys. Let's talk about this move. Why did the Mets do this? Well, we know the Mets suck right now, so let's just... the cat's out of the bag. If you haven't been following along, this Mets team is absolutely putrid right now. And because of that reason, they need to make some moves, and they need to do their best to not only improve the club as soon as they can, but also kind of set themselves up for the right position going forward, even if it's not going to have an immediate impact this year. Now, the pitchers that the Mets acquire, that being in Coleman and Landon Marco, are 2 top 20 pitching prospects in the LA Angels organization, with at least one of them potentially making his debut, if not by the end of the year, then certainly next year, if we're looking at the expected time of arrival for these guys. But the Mets parted with Eduardo Escobar because he's been in a limited role. As we know, he's done very well in his platooning, especially when he's facing left-handed pitching. I mean, he, up until his most recent game, was batting like 280 with, a north of 900 OPS against lefties this year. So he has had a lot of success that we have seen against lefties in that limited role, and really embracing that veteran-type presence with Brett Baty having the reins as your everyday third baseman. So now that Eddie's in this limited role, he's not on a big contract, but definitely something the Mets could be willing to part with at the right price. By the Mets eating this full contract, in which they have no problem doing, it's not going to impact them in any way, shape, or form. Now they're getting some very solid pitching prospect talent. So we're going to be going over these pitchers here in a minute. But more than anything, guys, let me look at the live chat right now. I want to see in the poll how you guys are feeling. And no, to anyone wondering, does this mean that the Mets are complete sellers? No, they are not. The Mets are still trying to be competitive and have a run this year. I know that might be a joke to some of you, but that is a serious serious notion, Steve Cohen is not going to sit down and allow this team to completely crumble this year unless things get to the point of like 10 games below 500 bad probably. But right now, the Mets are still trying to compete. They open up a roster spot on the offensive end that we'll get into shortly as to what that could mean for this club. But on the pitching front, this team is desperate for pitching. They're desperate for pitching depth in the farm, and this can now help set them up for potential deals going forward. Now, I'm not saying that the Mets are going to flip and trade away these pitchers right away, but the point is that they haven't had great pitching depth in their farm to begin with. Now that they add these two starters, this gives them some more leash and length should they wish to part with anyone that's, say, in their 15 to 30 range of prospects as we get closer to the trade deadline. So that is another thing to keep in mind when evaluating this deal for what it is right away. And Chris, thank you so much for a donation. Membership rather. I really appreciate that. Hype in chat to you, Chris. Again, appreciate everyone for chiming in live or on a replay. On injury list, rotator cuff injury. Yes, I know Coleman Crow is currently out with injury. I don't know how long he's going to be out with injury, but again, it doesn't mean much. He's not getting called up right away. We're aware of that. Coleman, if I'm not mistaken, he's only pitched in 4 games this year in the minor leagues. He's only pitched in 4 games. He has a 1.88 ERA and 4 starts in 24 innings pitched. So let's talk about these pitchers, and I really want to pay homage and tell Eduardo Escobar how much I appreciate the guy. Even though that Eddie wasn't anything special during his time in Queens, an infectious personality, phenomenal clubhouse guy, and he deserves nothing but the best in his future now in LA with the Angels, and then whatever is going to happen for the remainder of his career. Seriously, I mean, Escobar truly embraced his platoon role as a veteran and did it the absolute best way possible. He did not complain. He embraced it. He became good buds for Brett Beatty right away. You know, he helped pave the way for Beatty in certain aspects, and there's a lot of things I appreciate about Eduardo Escobar and his tenure with the Mets, as sporadic and as up and down as it was. Is he going to play the series in Colorado? Who are you talking about? Is he going to play the series in Colorado? Are you talking about Eddie for the Angels? If the Angels are playing Colorado, I'd imagine that he'll be playing very soon. I have no clue what the Angels' schedule is right now. So you lost me there. But let's talk for a minute. Let's talk about the pitchers. Then we'll get into talking more on Eduardo Escobar and why the Mets made this move. So we already talked a little bit about Coleman Crow. Again, he's 6 footer, 175 pounds. He was born right at the end of the year 2000. He's 22 years of age right now. He was a 2019 28th overall pick. 28th round, 841st pick by the LA Angels, and is already in their top 20 of prospects. He's been in Double-A with the Trash Pandas, which is easily one of the best Double-A, not only Double-A, but one of the best team names in all of baseball. Love that. So sick. But yeah, Coleman, to tell you a little bit about his arsenal and what you got working with him as we're just reading through MLB right now. His fastball right now is averaging, mid-90s, touching 94, but it plays up and gets a lot of ground ball outs according to MLB.com because of its sink. He throws a low 80s slider almost nearly as much as a fastball, and it comes with very high spin rates to miss bats in and out of the zone. He can fold in the slower upper 70s curveball at times, and his changeup flashes above average to plus as well. That's good to hear about the changeup, because when guys are drafted, one of the main things that they always struggle with, or don't even have for that matter, is the changeup. So I'm happy to hear he has that in arsenal. Okay, so he basically has a 4-pitch arsenal already. That's nice. That's head of schedule. So that is basically the initial status there with Coleman Crow. Now let's get on to the other star that the Mets acquired, that being Landon Marco, who was also on the Trash Pandas this year. 6 foot, 200 pounder, 23 years of age, was drafted in the 3rd round just back in 2021 by the Angels. And Marco, let's get into his arsenal a little bit. Let's see here. So he averages around 91, 92 right now in the heater. He has 2 distinct breaking pitches, manipulating the shape of his slider and curveball and keeping hitters off balance with both, according to MLB.com. Going forward, they went on to say his low 80s changeup has very good fade, as often his best secondary pitch. Again, it's nice to see these guys not only have control, but effectiveness in their changeup at their young ages of 22, 23 apiece. So that's certainly a plus. So now let's get into his statistics here that we've seen this season from Marco. Okay, in 2023 in AAA, he has a 4.8 ERA, so definitely has a lot more work to do. Again, not a guy that I'm expecting to impact the Mets right away. And for all we know, some of these guys could even be flipped in a bigger deal. And that's kind of where I'm viewing this. I know that the Mets want to build as much pitching depth as possible. I think it would be foolish for them to trade away pitching depth right away as well. But it's also important to note at least that the Mets, they traded away Escobar, and by eating his entire salary for the remainder of the season, are in a position now where they're getting better prospects back than what they would have gone if they didn't eat any of Eddie's salary. So you get 2 top 20 prospects from the Angels. I don't see how this is a loss because, again, Eddie had very limited trade value as is. He's going to a club which hopefully for his sake he can be effective on as the Angels are trying to push for playoffs this year, in which right now they're in a position where they certainly can make that happen should they not completely downfall in typical Angels fashion. I say that as a Mets fan that we've seen our own fair share of downfalls as well. But the point again is that the Mets are able to get young, controllable, starting pitching right now, in which maybe they're going to turn the one or both of these guys into relievers. Maybe these guys are going to be flipped in a bigger deal down the stretch as soon as this year's trade deadline. What we know is that this is a trade where you look at for the Mets, given what they currently had in their roster construction on the bench, how desperate they were for all types of pitching, youth pitching, with a lot of control that have yet to even start their RBs or anything like that. You get that, guys, with plenty of options that you have now in AAA. This is what the Mets have been trying to build for a while. I'm glad that they cut ties with Eddie at this point in the season, honestly, considering the fact that Eddie's trade value, while it wasn't high, he has been utilizing that platoon role very well. And obviously the Angels saw that and were willing to cough up 2 top 20 pitching prospects in doing so. So overall, I like this move for the Mets. I have very little complaints. The only thing is that when we get on the sentimental side, I really did enjoy Eduardo Escobar's tenure here in Queens. I didn't enjoy it necessarily as much for the consistency play because it was more of a lack of consistency. If it wasn't for Eddie in the final month and a half of the season last year, he wasn't doing anything besides hitting a cycle midseason against the Padres when the Mets still lost that series because Alonso got hurt that series, if I'm not mistaken. Marte got hurt. Everyone and their mother got hurt that series, for all the OGs that remember that one. But Eddie, again, infectious personality, great clubhouse guy. Every time they did the interviews with him, he's always like, give me 5 minutes. You know, he just cracking me up. And I just can't get over how much of a true veteran he was when it became abundantly clear early on this season that the third base job is just not his anymore. It's Brett Beatty's time to shine. It's time to pass over the keys to him. And Eddie could have been stubborn. He could have been, the opposite of a good teammate. But instead, he decided to be the best teammate he could possibly be, helped pave the way for Beatty to have immediate success at the MLB level, and was the best teammate imaginable doing so. So for all those reasons, for everything that you did in the organization, for your great run down the stretch with the Mets last year, and just for being a great, humble player overall, I appreciate you, Eduardo Escobar, for everything you did for this club. I wish you the best with your future endeavors now with the Angels and then wherever you're going. But now this opens things up to a really interesting aspect. I'm sure many of you are wondering, what are the Mets going to do now with that roster spot opening? Great question you might have. This excites me. This really does, because as I say this, watch the Mets call up Luke Voit. I mean, it would be the least bit shocking with the way he's been playing. He's been tearing the cover off the ball, no less, since he signed with the Mets on that minor league deal. However, a couple updates as well. Tyler McGill, as much as I love the guy, he needs to work on his command. He was sent down, that we saw officially announced today. Makes sense for the Mets. They brought up a veteran right-hand reliever, and Vinny, I'm blanking on his last name, 32-year-old right-hander, just a guy to have right now in the pen because the Mets are so desperate for any and all pitching at the moment. But McGill, he needs to work on that arsenal more. The Mets need to get things structured and figured out their pitching. Jose Quintana will hopefully be making his long-awaited Mets rotation debut at some point in July, hopefully early to mid-July, and how he's ramping up as he's been pitching in Port St. Lucie on every 5-day basis, and then he'll ramp up from there right now. But this is a really intriguing aspect with this trade. Now you have an open bench spot, right? And while the Mets aren't necessarily in desperate need for offensive production the way that they are for pitching, because pitching is the exact demise of this club. This Mets team is going to go nowhere this year unless they properly address their pitching and then some. They have to make some significant upgrades in the bullpen. They need to add starting pitching depth at absolute minimum. But one thing is certain, they still have their streaks in their offense, and the Mets do have 2 guys in AAA right now that can have an immediate impact should they be given enough of a leash, which honestly I can't say that they would, in a Mark Vientos and or Ronnie Mauricio. Ronnie Mauricio is turning the cover off the ball in a AAA. He's been leading the minors for a while in hits, if I'm not mistaken. Defensively, he's been getting more reps down left field, which is a plus because that's where we expect to see him play when he gets called up. Mark Vientos just hit a bomb yesterday, his 14th of the year in minor leagues since being sent down. So those are guys that we would like to see in this lineup, but with the assumption that they're not going to get consistent playing time unless more roster moves are made, a part of me almost feels like maybe they are going to bring up Luke Voit. Maybe they're going to give Voit a chance every now and then. Maybe they're going to give Voit that opportunity, maybe against left-handed pitching at DH, with keeping Tommy Pham in left field, having Marquez off the bench. I'm really curious how the Mets are going to go about this, because I feel like they're not done when it comes to trading, maybe some bench pieces. I feel like Marquez is certainly a guy that will be considered via trade in some way, shape, or form. Pham is a guy that if the Mets do plan to actually try to still push for a playoff spot this year, I don't see why you would trade him, at least not yet. Maybe something where down the stretch, if he's continuing to stay hot, you trade him and you help get some bullpen help in doing so. And then you call up the kids and hope that Mauricio playing left field every day gives you the offensive production you're looking for. A lot to bank on with a kid. However, just spitballing and throwing ideas out there, because I'm sure the Mets have thought about every potential scenario imaginable as they have continued to now build and start this trade route for them. So more than anything, I didn't expect this to happen. No one expected this to happen at this rate, but I'm happy and I'm excited and I'm looking forward to seeing what the Mets do going forward. It's nice to see them make moves and early, right? Because we're still over a month away from the MLB trade deadline, which is the first week of August. So we still have quite a bit of time before we get there. But the fact that the Mets have already shown a willingness to part ways with what many would call dead weight, nothing personal against Escobar. When Vogel's not performing, nothing personal against him. Canada, the same applies. These guys have been impactful in spurts here or there, but they haven't been able to give the Mets that consistent production that you would hope for guys in a limited role, which, granted, is easier said than done. I understand that. You're in a limited role, even as a veteran. That can be hard to adjust to, but the point still applies here. This is a Mets team that desperately needs to make changes, and fast. They need to build the farm right now in the pitching. This was a move that could potentially be focused on the years to come, more so this year itself, and we'll soon find out if this is something where the Mets are going to trade away more depth that are on expiring contracts with, say, club options, or just expiring contracts as a whole, like the Tommy Phams of the world. And that'll really give us Mets fans a true grasp and understanding on what their vision is this year, because we don't know right now. People are saying sell, sell, sell. Then you're having reports through SNY, and pardon me as I may need to sneeze. Excuse me. We did see a report from SNY's A. Martino, because I know how much you guys all love Andy. He came out today and said that, through reports, he has been hearing that the Mets are willing to basically eat bad contracts, whether it's from the Nationals, whether it's from the Yankees, which is I do not foresee happening, whether it's from the Cardinals and, a former friend, now phone, Steven Matz, or whoever it may be, and in return, acquiring immediate help on the pitching front, either starting or especially bullpen front. Now, I plan on expanding on that in a future video in the coming days, so I won't be long-winded here. However, what I will say is that this is something that the Mets have toyed and considered since Steve Cohen first became owner. So I just want to throw this out there with what this potential philosophy and mindset is for Billy Epler and the Mets right now, because if there's one thing the Mets can control where they can separate themselves from the rest of the pack, it's the money that they're willing to eat and spend. Steve Cohen has made that abundantly clear since he became owner. Money, to an extent, is a non-factor, and that is what separates the Mets from every other club in baseball in their true spending. Now, while the spending hasn't looked pretty on paper right now, because you have these big dollar signs and a lackluster production, thankfully they don't have any long-term commitments aside from Francisco Lindor and the Brandon Nimmo's of the world, and really, this is a team that is still destined to be able to spend for years and years on end because of these shorter-term high AAV type deals. Now, when evaluating clubs where they say want to eat a contract of, as crazy as it may sound, a Patrick Corbin, a Steven Matz, a Josh Donaldson, which I don't see happening personally, what the Mets would be able to do is eat that contract, cut ties with the player right away, not give him a light of day of even getting a consideration on the roster, and acquire controllable and effective bullpen depth right now, which is something that the Mets are not willing to acquire by giving up top prospects. The Mets still have the same mindset that they had last year, especially when it comes to the immediate pitching front to help this team right now. They don't want to give up a Rodney Mauricio, a Mark Vientos. They don't want to give up a Blade Tidwell, a Calvin Ziegler, a Dominic Campbell. The list goes on and on. The Mets do not want to get rid of anyone in their top-loaded farm system because they know that the ramifications can be massive that we've seen with the PCA Javi Baez deal a couple years ago, right? I mean, we've seen countless times in years past where the Mets got too desperate at trade deadline to acquire a player that, one, didn't stay, and two, was impactful, but it didn't drastically impact the direction the Mets had for the remainder of that year. So while it may seem crazy to potentially eat a contract of a shitty player, the reason why you do that is because Steve Cohen is willing to do that. Doesn't impact the team now, isn't going to impact them for years later. The same way that, many of you probably forgot that Robinson Cano is still on the books. The majority of James McCann's contract is still on the books. Yet it's not really having any immediate impact on the club and their configuration because Steve Cohen is willing to spend those dollars in order to help the team now while also keeping that farm intact the best it possibly can be, unless you see a true blockbuster come about where, of course, you have to part with a Vientos, a Mauricio, a Tidwell, a Hamill, whoever it may be, right? Those are unique things that could happen. But what is certain is that the Mets can control one thing better than most clubs, if not all clubs in baseball, and that is the money they work with and the money that they are willing to eat. So that is another really interesting aspect of this all that we will be following along to see if that type of philosophy where you eat a shitty contract to get immediate pitching help that will help you now, will help this team be more effective right now, if that will come to fruition or not. But what we have seen from this trade again is that the Mets are showing a willingness to part ways with deadweight, expiring contracts, bench players that have limited role as is, that are not everyday players and are only going to impact you to such a high degree. And thankfully, the Beatties, the Alvarezes, and then you'll see to eventually the Vientoses, the Mauricios, these guys being basically MLB ready is only going to further help the Mets in this decision making and saying, hey, we really like this guy, but we know if we trade him, this opens up a spot for this kid. And we truly feel that the ceiling for this kid is so high that he may even have an impact this year that could be to a higher degree of, say, trying to get desperate and trade for a big bat by the trade deadline, right? So these are decisions that this Mets team needs to make as much as humanly possible, as the Mets are currently sitting down, losing 2-1 with one-on-one out in the bottom of the sixth at the time of recording this. 98 pitches for Kodai Senga right now, as it looks like he is going to be done after this inning, should he be able to get out of it unscathed. We'll see what happens on that front. But going back into this Mets talk, I want to see where you guys are at the poll right now. I want to see how you're feeling. Again, latest news for people that are just chiming in, watching on replay. Yes, the Mets have traded their veteran infielder Eduardo Escobar. He will be going to the LA Angels in return for two pitching prospects by the names of Coleman Crow and Landon Marco. Two AA right-hand starting pitching prospects that could impact the Mets within the next year and a half. Because, for Coleman Crow, he has an ETA of this year. Landon Marco has an ETA of 2024. I don't expect either to have an immediate impact on the Mets this year. However, it's just nice knowing that these guys are not far away from the bigs, should these ETAs hold true to a certain extent, and should the Mets, say, not decide to flip them for a deal of more significance later on this season. But let me get into the poll and see where you guys are at. Again, appreciate everyone that's been watching live on a replay. We're just about at 100 likes, so thank you guys so much for that. Continue smashing that like and subscribe button as you chime in as we break down the latest breaking news in Metsland that surprised everyone and their mother and their father and their sister and their brother, including myself, that Eduardo Escobar is no longer a New York Metropolitan. So out of roughly 500 votes here in the live chat, 44% of you guys love this deal, 44% say not sure, and 12% say dislike it and he should have stayed. Interesting. We're really at a full 44-44 split on the love it, not sure yet. Jeff McNeil's a little banged up. He's getting his left wrist checked out. It looks like he's going to stay in the game, which is good. I didn't see exactly what happened. Looks like he had a little bit of a hard fall going for a ball. He's going to stay in, thankfully. Love Jeff, and I hope that, his wrist is going to be fine, but two, he gets out of, his pull hitting slump that he's in right now, because he's just pulling the ball so much. So I'm actually, okay. So he was I see what happened. He was trying to get the throw. Bryson Stott stealing second. Alvarez was wide right, which is wide left for McNeil. McNeil reaches out, gets a little clip by Stott's cleat, and that is not a pretty sight. So hopefully McNeil's okay. He was in a lot of pain initially, but he is staying in the ball game because he is an absolute trooper. Let me see some of your comments in here before we go forward, guys. 45% of you guys are now saying not sure yet. And I don't know what's happening in the chat, but be nice. Settle down, huh? Be good. Be good, please. But yeah, like I said, I did not expect this to happen. I really did not. I knew that moves would be happening, and this is the first of a big wave that we're going to see this year. Whether it's to help the team in the future and help the team now, whether they go full sell somehow, or if the Mets really, really show some things that we didn't expect on the buying front. Whatever it may be in the next month or so of the trade rumor season starting to begin and unfold, one thing is certain that we all see is that the Mets need help. Great play by Lindor. Saves a run. Or did he save a run? Okay. Runners on the corners. Great play by Lindor there to not allow the runner and Stott to score. Still runners on the corners. 1 out, 102 pitches for Kodai Senga. But I like this. That's really the biggest and final thing I'll say on that front. I like this move. Eduardo Escobar was a guy that was only going to continue to be limited, and this opens the floodgates now for Brett Baty to play every day, to be playing against both left-hand and right-handed pitching, in which he should, because even if he's going to have growing pains, you want to see his growing pains now, especially with a Mets team that, let's face it, we have no clue what's going to happen with them this year. At this rate, they are not going to make playoffs as much as I want them to. Kodai Senga's day is done, leaving runners on the corners, 102 pitches in the sixth. Hopefully the Mets can get out of this inning unscathed, but I'm probably getting ahead of myself there. But I like that Baty's hopefully going to be getting that continued leash of playing every day based on matchups. Doesn't matter. I hope that we see one of Ronnie or Vientos called up in the near future, and if so, that they get consistent playing time. I know Vogelback has been swinging the bat better as of late, but he is someone where a part of me would really like to see the Mets consider trading as well, to get more of a leash for the younger kids at that DH position. Vogelback, again, has been swinging the bat nice right now, but he's just another one of those guys where I just feel like the Mets are wasting an opportunity with what they could really thrive with their children there in the minors. And I could be wrong in that. It doesn't mean that they're going to have immediate success, but it's worth giving them an opportunity still, especially with over a month left prior to the trade deadline. But again, I could be wrong on that. That's just my humble and initial and raw opinion in regards to that. And where the Mets stand right now is they're 6 games below 500. They lose today. They're 7 games below 500, and it just, when it rains, it pours. And also, do want to let everybody know that as of now, barring any changes, I will be with the 7 line tomorrow for the Mets game 2 with Mad Max on the bump. It was supposed to be Cookie Carrasco, but Buck switched things up, so it's going to be Mad Max tomorrow. JV's going to be pushed. He'll be pitching on Monday, so they won't be back-to-back in the rotation anymore for the time being. Going to be a fun matchup. Hopefully the Mets can get the dub tomorrow. The weather doesn't look great, but for anyone attending the 7 line eye tomorrow, 1,500 Mets fans strong, all wearing their custom blue shirts that say, it's always amazing on Broad Street instead of it's always sunny in Philadelphia, which was a nice play on words that Darren at the 7 line created. If you guys are going to be there, pregame begins at noon tomorrow, and there will be, of course, that huge tailgate basically in the Xfinity Live area. There is a discount on beer if you guys are wearing your 7 line shirts, and that goes from like 12 all the way to 3, and then around 3 is when everyone, including myself, will be heading into the ballpark. So almost certain I'll be there tomorrow. Just want to make sure the weather doesn't screw us over too bad. It's kind of a wait and see. We probably won't find out until we're there, but for anyone attending tomorrow's game, look out for your short schmuck boy. I'll be there, and it should hopefully be a good time regardless on win or lose. It's always a great time being with the 7 line. I don't want to see Carrasco, says Ramon. What a catastrophe of a season, says Priest on the plane. This is going to be the first of a fire sale for sure. Yeah, I don't think that this is going to be a fire sale, truly. I think the Mets are still going to try to be competitive here. Whether it's the right or wrong move, that is yet to be seen, but I don't foresee Steve Cohen kind of sitting on his ass and saying, okay, we're going full sell mode. I don't think he will, just because of how much he's invested in this team this year. Yes, it's like you don't want to act erratic and make a poor decision just based on what you invested heading into the year, but there's still something to be said about this club and for what it is right now, and that if they can get proper pieces, they certainly can put themselves in a much better position than what they are right now. They suck at keeping the ball inside the park. That needs to be fixed. Their bullpen has been nothing short of atrocious this year. Their starting pitching depth has been nothing short of ridiculous. The Mets are the third worst team in the NL at minimum. And, like innings pitched from their starters or like how deep they go on an average start. So it has been pretty. But why can't we go full sell mode? Not that they can't. I just don't think that they're going to. I don't think the Mets are going to commit to that yet. Truly. I just don't foresee it happening. It's not necessarily if I agree or disagree with that decision. I just don't. It doesn't look like they're going to. And I think we'll find out more certainly in the next couple moves the Mets do, whether it's in a couple days, couple weeks, lean up to the trade deadline, whatever it is. But guys, really, really curious to hear more of your opinions on this. So for everyone on replay, drop them in the comments below. Again, thank you guys all so much for watching. It is greatly appreciated. And before we do get out of here, just want to let you know about one of our amazing sponsors on the channel that many of you guys know about already. And I'm going to you guys can click the link in the live chat description, or for people on replay, ignore that because that was from the score is from the previous game I just updated. That's Phillies. So I don't even know if we're going to do a post game tonight. We'll see. Probably won't if the Mets lose. I'll probably just do a recap. But as we're doing with our great partners at Sower MLB, you guys have a chance to win a Francisco Alvarez jersey. And all you have to do is sign up, click the link in the description, in the comments of the live chat, and the Mets misplayed another ball. Lindor somehow allowed a ball to drop, and the Phillies take a 3-1 lead. Bad fundies by the Mets again, as they are now losing 3-1, and 2 of the 3 runs that they allowed to score today likely wouldn't have happened if they didn't handle a fly ball. So I'm going to actually watch that replay quick, and then I'm going to go back into talking about the Francisco Alvarez jersey giveaway, because how in God's name did Lindor miss this? High pop-up, shallow left field for Lindor. He's going after it. Fam's not far behind him. Lindor tries to get it, and Lindor just lets it drop. I don't know if he thought Fam was going to get it or what. Complete miscommunication. Again, another piss-poor defensive play by this team. This Mets infield this Mets team defensively looked really, really strong to begin the year. And over the past month, it has been an absolute shit show. No communication whatsoever. I'm not even shocked that happened as a run comes in to score, and now is a 3-0 Phillies lead. And I'm going to go on a limb and say there's a very good chance the Phillies are going to take game 1 of this series. But getting into if there's any positive, it is this Francisco Alvarez jersey giveaway. So all you got to do, again, is sign up to Sower MLB, join Wardy's League, draft your team, and, of course, compete against myself and other fellow Mets fans in the community. And then by drafting your team and sign up to the weekly tournaments that you have provided, and again, you don't have to spend a dime to sign up and play, to draft your team, all that fun stuff, best MLB fantasy game out there, you're automatically entered for your chance at winning a Francisco Alvarez jersey, which I'll be picking one random and lucky winner at the end of the month. So make sure you're chiming in for that. And again, shout out to Sower MLB for being a great sponsor on the channel as always. And I wish you all good luck to everyone that has signed up. I will continue to do so for your opportunity to win an Alvarez jersey. But yeah, shout out to the Mets for messing up horrendously there. It's now starting to downpour as we're 6 innings into the game. Very solid chances that we're going to be having a rain delay shortly. And that'll be it. So I actually messed that up. Here again, thank you guys all so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. This is Wardy signing out, and apologies for the visuals getting messed up for whatever reason. Mets trade away Eduardo Escobar. They bring in some pitching talent. Now we'll see what is next in store for them, and what unfortunately has been a shit show of a season as they try their best to rectify things as soon as humanly possible. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you whenever I see you. Again, 7-line outing. As of now, I will be there tomorrow, so barring any changes, I hope to see you beauties there. Have a good one, folks.